Do you think on the flip side, and is it possible? Because I think it's, some people might overstate it, but I do think a figure like General Soleimani, certainly, Pepe Escobar, who's been on this show writing in Asia Times, would say that, General Soleimani, of course, first and foremost for Iran, and then sort of for a certain type of Shiism, but actually in a much broader way, figure like this could also just be interpreted as representative of like the resistance writ large to like the imperial order, basically, right? So somebody somebody on the receiving end of U.S. interference in Latin America or Africa could look at a figure like this and have very different politics or positions and so on, but say, well, okay, there was somebody who put up a fight, Mm-hmm. And what I'm wondering about that then is you don't see a possibility of some sense of that, yeah, we're going to organize to fight Trump across class and sectarian lines, because whatever else we think, maybe we're not particularly fond of Netanyahu or MBS. Is that a possibility?
I don't see it as a possibility. Your characterization of Soleimani is correct. Certainly that was a reputation that he fostered. But, I don't want to over-egg the pudding, but like in speaking with, since last Friday, it feels a lot longer, but in speaking with various different people on the ground across the Middle East, Soleimani had a Saddam-esque aura to him. He was... While we see, X amount, the report of 1 million people turning out for his protest in Iran, he has just as many detractors across those countries that do remember the role he played in the siege of Aleppo and do remember the role he played in the killing of Rafiq Hariri, and do sort of see that this was a man who kind of paid for his sins as well. There is feeling across these different countries amongst a lot of different people that this was a guy who got what was coming to him in a lot of ways. So,
but that would go along. Certainly not in Iran, and that would go along sectarian lines.
No, especially considering that Kurdish. The Kurds in Iran certainly don't see him as a figure worth, as a martyr, as someone. They see him again as a particular figure who was a member of an oppressive regime that helped keep them as an underclass. So I think that there is just like his essentially maybe not seeing him as a Che Guevara like character, but it would almost be like, I think, equating him to like reverence of a ex-director of the CIA, mm-hmm. and considering the different proxy wars and the different protest movements that he has helped, popular protest movements that he's helped keep suppressed. Essentially, there's no way that I see him being a potential uniting figure for across class or sect.
Well, even beyond, okay, so then let me take him out of the equation. What about just Donald Trump murdering people and starting war and kind of, crude imperialism back in the region?
Yeah, well, yes, I think that definitely would have a lot more currency, especially whenever you have a character like Donald Trump, right, who's just so obtuse and such a bloated, is a caricature, really. He's
right.
not a real person. And that would definitely have a lot more sort of currency. But even thinking back to the days of when we could equate to some kind of semblance of pan-Arab unity in the Middle East with Gamal Abdel Nasser, it was a case of former president of Egypt. His victory after the Suez Canal against colonial forces might be closest to the type of movement that you're talking about. But the problem that occurred after Nasser was that he overreached in trying to create particularly a pan-Arabist identity. Now, it may have had different pan-Arab parties in Syria and Egypt and across the region that he tried to unite with, but he was still trying to establish his own pan-Arab identity. And whenever he created a brief unity with Syria, it was very much an Egyptian hegemony that was the problem. So even in those moments, whenever we had vaguely left-wing politics under a sort of ethnic nationalism that was pan the region, it still faltered under smaller sub-regional, i.e. national identities.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.